great to have you on. It's good to talk with clients, and this is quite a weird one because obviously we've been in the same role, not all too recently. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit around how accounting firms are using Fathom to deliver services to their clients. I think Fathom is, well, from personal experience, a great tool in times like this. So. Do you want to introduce yourself, Darren? I know a lot of people will know who you are, probably listening to this, but tell us a little bit about what you're up to at the moment and what you've done previously.
Yeah, Andrew, great to catch up with you again. Yes, we are kind of two ends of the same role, if you kind of like that. So, yeah, it must be a little bit surreal, and we're going to probably rip the fabric of space-time at some point. But yeah, good to catch up with you this afternoon. So, for anyone who hasn't met me previously, I'm Darren Glanville. I'm the country manager in EMEA for Fathom, so I've been with Fathom for 3 months. Inherited a great team and platform in the UK and EMEA from Andrew. This was a little bit of a pressing in my background, so I've been involved with accountants and software for probably pushing 20 years now, starting in the heady days of kind of Sage, and then moving through different vendors, people like CCH. Worked at Xero for a period of time. I was one of the account managers at Xero, which really got me into cloud accounting and working with some very forward-thinking early adopters. And from there, I've moved into the ecosystem, and more recently, I was actually in practice with a Northeast firm for just over 3 years as the director of operations and helping them to embed more processes around advisory. So this is kind of a combination of a multitude of things. Passionate about advisory, passionate about small business, tech, and the accounting space. So yeah, really great to be part of the team at Fathom.
Brilliant. No, that's exciting. Okay, great. Well, I'm intrigued then, because you have your career's been in this accounting software space for a long time, and you've dealt with and worked with and been in accounting firms for some time. I'm keen to know, like, how does the cadence of talking to clients work in an accounting firm? What are the, how do accounting firms interact with clients? Do they talk to them regularly? Obviously, these are unusual times, but in the past, has it changed at all over the 20 years? How often are accounting firms talking with clients? Yeah.
First of all, that's a great question. I think, has the cadence changed? How do accountants communicate with the clients? I think it depends. I think ultimately every accountant would say that they do talk to their clients. I think it's a case of how regular that is. Yeah, I think we all know of firms who would say yes, they have regular contact with the clients. It's about how frequently. I think a lot of firms would, prior to the last kind of 10 years, before 2010, would have said yes, they have mostly an annual relationship with their clients. It's very much compliance driven. Lots and lots of people call themselves advisors. I'll kind of get into the advisory space in a moment, but I think that, in the whole, accountants do have great conversations with their clients. I think it's just about frequency. And I think it's more around what does advisory mean to their clients and what does it mean to the practitioners that are delivering it. I think that's probably a more interesting question.
Well, that's a good setup then. All right, then let's lead into that as you've set yourself up. Then, in terms of, well, in a really short sentence, what is business advisory then in today's world? Has it even changed in the last 6 months? What business advisory is to you?
I think there's probably a train of thought that would actually say that advisory hasn't changed in the last 20 years. It's just we're labelling certain areas as advisory more, I think, now. And I think, we're seeing people talk about in marketing. I think is it driven by vendors that talk about cash flow advisory, we talk about finance advisory, we talk about app advisory. Is it just a buzzword? I think if you kind of cast your mind back to early 2000s, there were people that were joining organisations like 2020 Group, AVN, that were really leveraging business development. Let's not call it advisory. It's more like business development, and really trying to understand what their clients wanted. And I think this is the key to delivering really successful advisory services or business development services to your clients, is putting them first and understanding a simple process, which is where are they now? What do they want? how do we set them on a plan and how do we measure and monitor that? And that can encompass a whole range of services from, doing budgets and cash flow forecasts through to management reporting, KPIs. It could include wealth planning, exit strategies, and a whole range of other services in between. And I think it's naturally what people move into the profession for. I don't think I've ever come across anyone who says, look, I've become an accountant because I love doing bookkeeping, and that's where I want to stay. I think there's an inherent desire to help people.
Yeah.
And get into that, how can I really help this client? How can I help transform their business? I think conversely to that, there's the client side of this. Coming from practice, I've also seen micro businesses, very, very successful micro businesses, not understand their numbers, not understand how much they should be paying themselves, let alone how much they should be paying staff, or what the process is behind that. Should they be VAT registered? Shouldn't they be VAT registered? There's a whole range of services there. So I think the profession has an opportunity and a duty of care to educate their clients around some of these areas. But I think equally as vendors, we have an opportunity to educate accountants on how to best deliver those services as well. So I think there's a really interesting combination here. I think certainly from the practice, point of view that we had, one of the key things is just starting that conversation. And I think too many firms are possibly fearful of dipping their toe into the advisory space for, in certain cases, maybe litigation in certain areas of the world and the globe, because you can tie yourself up in knots in that in certain key areas. I think for others, it's about who has the skill set in the firm to be able to deliver that. And perhaps, as a profession, we're focused on the technical ability as opposed to some of the softer skills, the ability to open up those conversations, as opposed to, being great at producing a balance sheet and a P&L.
So on that point then, because I think that's really interesting, why... So if you look at Fathom's customer base, or you've been working with Fathom's clients for 3 months, what separates out the firms that are using Fathom software to its full potential and those that aren't? What is it that makes firms get the best value from Fathom?
I think it's a great question. I think it's not just about Fathom. I think it's about lots of tech. Firms are only just scratching the surface of what's possible within them. And certainly with Fathom, I think some people can often pigeonhole you into thinking you're just a great management reporting tool, but aren't aware that you can do some amazing things with KPIs. With your clients, you can produce beautiful board packs that you can share with management and investors. And now you can also do cash flow forecasting as well. So I think people sometimes aren't always necessarily aware of that. And I think one of the toughest things that you see is, and I've certainly had this in practice, it's difficult. I'm saying you can't. It's very difficult to monetize a report. You find it very difficult that the clients often don't see value in the report itself. And I remember having conversations with clients and talking to other practitioners as well around how you present that report. And, I've seen practices produce reports and they've just printed them off the standard office printer. That 80 GSM. What you're trying to talk about here is something that's tangible. It has a value to it, ignoring the advice that you're building into that and the narrative that you're putting into it. But even if you just hand someone something that's on 80 GSM paper, why aren't you printing it off on glossier paper and slightly thicker? That's the moment that someone touches it, they go, wow, that feels different.
Yeah.
It's little things like that. So I think we can finesse it if we want to, but fundamentally the data, the report, isn't really valuable without the context, and I think the service that you wrap around that.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I remember a comment
I should probably ask you the same question.
Well, no, it's interesting. I mean,
I'm in my shoes as well.
Well, no, it's true, and I think what I was finding is the idea that actually I was starting to see the management reports become the old statutory accounts. So what I mean by that was obviously statutory accounts get produced to go for a legislative requirement. So they're not really created for the business owner, and management accounts should be created for the business owner. That's the purpose of management accounts. But I was finding accountants were taking the same approach to management accounts that they were with stat accounts, and it being a tick box exercise to get the management accounts out to clients. And for me, and this was part of my passion for moving to do the things that we're doing at Connect 4, was that actually the value is in the conversation that you have around the numbers. It's around the 20 years of experience you've built up talking to businesses like this one, rather than saying you've missed your KPI by 5% and giving absolutely no insight about how they might operationally change, what the tax implications might be, what a restructure option is, what the funding options are. And so that's my own personal view. And I think I imagine we're pretty aligned on the value of actually, making your advice valuable to a client, not a piece of paper, but actually talking to them on a human level.
Yeah, I think it's become difficult because I think we've seen so much change in the profession and technology over the last 10 years. I remember when Xero first came onto the market. This was different. It was a fresh approach. The democratization of data being available to other people was completely radical. But one thing that's always stuck to me. I don't think it really matters if you're selling a general ledger product or a tool that can really help practitioners dive into advisory and help their clients. One thing that's kind of always stuck with me is assumption is the killer of that, the drive to do that. I've heard so many times, my clients don't want that. I've heard that so many times, and yet the question has never been asked. And quite often I've seen clients move to other firms because that question has never been asked. And then clients are surprised, accountants are surprised when clients move because they're not providing that service, but we'll do. But you never told the client that. You never asked the question. And someone's come in and stolen that client from you. So that, to me, is always it. So I think assumption is difficult. I think people assume that advisory is difficult. It doesn't have to be. It has to be outcome-based for the client. And it's like you and I sitting down and saying, hey, Andrew, how's things at Connect 4? Where are you now and where do you want to be? It doesn't matter whether that person, all their goal is to have a nice holiday next year, which I'm sure is very topical with everyone right now. But that may be your only goal and dream. So how, as a professional, do I help you achieve that? Whether that's just putting something away every month, making sure you're paying your tax bill, the correct amount of tax, or if that's something that you're scaling as a business. Connect 4 wants to scale really quickly over the next 5 years, and you want to get a great exit strategy from that. How do we help you achieve that? How are we going to measure and put in a regular cadence of contact? I think that's the challenge. And it starts with a simple conversation. And I think there's lots of people out there that can help practitioners now. Obviously, we have the sister platform Advisable. We've got a lot of accountants helping other people with some of that content. I think you've got organisations like The Gap and others that are really bringing business development to the fore and helping practitioners with that blueprint. But it comes back to the human level. We can automate the bookkeeping and the mundane, but it's going to come back to a conversation that two people end up having. And I think, the more that you're doing this, we've seen the rise of the use of Zoom. Just because we're remote doesn't mean that we can't have those same conversations. So that's what I think is
I completely agree. And it's at the heart of kind of what we're doing at Connect 4 is that intentionality of talking to clients and actually measure the right KPIs within your accounting firm. Actually, how often are you talking to clients is possibly as important as have you filed quarterly VAT returns. It's on the same level, if in my view, at least. So that's fascinating. Well, just leading on from that then, Darren, in terms of Fathom, how do you, we'll go into Fathom in a second, but I'm keen to understand, how do you use Fathom in a conversation with a client? Say you're let's say I was a client, you're an accountant, how do you best, what do you bring to life from Fathom in a virtual, for example, Connect 4 call?
I think there's a couple of ways that you can use it. And one of the things that we used to talk about when I was in practice was, if we bring a client in for a complimentary client review, or now, for example, is a great time to do this. And we believe every client should at some point have a cash flow, at least a forecast around that, at the very minimum a budget, because it was very easy for client spending to get out of control. Again, as a practice, we were slightly different because all of our clients were on zero, so it was very easy for us to make those connections and to pull that data in a very easy way. And we could very quickly spin up a P&L, a balance sheet, and a budget off those numbers. And for sometimes we would just use it as a discussion document. This is how you performed last month. Was that near, or how far off that was what you were expecting? And just to leverage that, we'd probably tie that in deeper with a much more interesting discussion around, okay, what's your vision? What's your value? What's your purpose? Where do you want to be over what period of time? And what are the key, we talk about KPIs, and I think this is an interesting point, you raised that earlier. Key performance indicators, I think far too often people are measuring arbitrary numbers because they think it sounds good. And it actually bears no resemblance to what's important for them to measure.
Okay.
And I'd rather sit and say to someone, choose one KPI and measure it exceptionally well and build from there, than someone to say, hey, I want 6 KPIs. Now, if that KPI is profitability, great, but it just could be cash at bank. So whatever that KPI is, let's build on that and focus on that. But let's equally understand what your overarching goal is. And understand what time frame. And I think we would certainly use it in that level.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think I'll add it to the resources of this recording, actually, the idea of a North Star metric, which is kind of like the king of KPIs. And it can change over time, but I think that completely aligns with what you're saying. With that in mind then, should we take a look? If you click share screen on the green button, you should be able to share the right window for Fathom. And we'll take a look. If you can give us just a few highlights of things which in a virtual meeting you should be looking at if you're a current Fathom customer.
Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So obviously, if I just look at my client list, I'm going to use my Newcastle Cafe company here. I'm just going to go into probably my report settings first and foremost. One of the things I'm going to look at here is, skip some of the settings, but we can set up KPIs. One of the things that I will be looking at here is, what are the results that we get from the business, first and foremost, and how that overlays with what they expected from that performance. Now, KPIs are so important. As I said, it could just be one. We can see here very quickly whether we're looking at all of our KPIs, or I'm only interested in looking at the KPIs that are on track once we've set them up. So one of the great features of Fathom is the ability to really surface these KPIs in a much clean, crisp, beautiful looking way. We can look at profitability. One of the things that we would look at for a lot of our clients, and one of the things that I find really easy to use about Fathom, is getting to know what your break-even point is. There are so many businesses that don't understand what their break-even point is. So just having that ability to see, this is your break-even point and this is your margin of safety, it puts people's mind at ease, because they can see what's going on. This is without us diving into any depth of forecasting, business road mapping. This is just looking at the pure results. And I think this also stands out from what I've seen with small businesses. Not every one of them would understand the finer points. If I presented it just in the format of a P&L or balance sheet, they wouldn't understand it. They get number blurred, if I can use that as a term. So for them to just be able to go through this and see it in this sense, where we can talk through this so that they understand it, is even better for us. One thing for me personally, and speaking to a lot of clients at Value that we had when I was there, was some of those clients actually have stock. So one key thing for me, for example, is looking at them and saying, are we overtrading? Are we at risk of overtrading? So by looking at this snapshot of their cash flow, we can see things like a change in retained earnings or other equity, which could point to something like a stock being out of sync. So it's nice for clients to be able to see this, and for us to very quickly see, are you potentially overtrading here? without going through a full forecast. And I think that's for a lot of businesses is where they can fall foul, is to overtrade.
Okay.
Especially now with Brexit and buying stock in as well.
Yeah.
And heavy stocks. One thing I really like is the goal seek. Do apologise for the dog waffle in the background.
It's fine.
One of the things I really like about goal seek is having the ability to see the impact of decisions that we're making in the business before we make them, and just running through this as a scenario. So, for example, if I wanted to increase my gross profit, I can switch the selection panel here through a number of metrics. I'll choose gross profit. I can see where I am, and I can see where I want to be. And again, if I want to change that to, let's say, 500,000, it's now there. I can see as I change these, so I can see how far I can progress. So I may have to look at putting a price increase in. Just by doing an 8% increase in my prices, I can achieve my revenue goal. Mm-hmm. Now, in most cases, it may be that I'm sitting here wondering if I put my prices up by 8%, I'll probably lose 10% of my customers. So I can play different scenarios out that suit me. So maybe it's actually a 5% price increase that I run, but can I increase my volume or reduce my cost of sales? Are there additional areas I can trim to help me get closer to that? I may not be able to hit the entire goal, but at least I can see my progress towards it. So we would use the goal seek to really inform some decision making around that. And I think that's a really, really powerful feature. Again, I think that as a firm, once we go through this, one of the features that's so powerful is the ability to automate this to the client on a regular basis, including the commentary. So the ability to go into reports, create that report, create the frequency, the information we're updating, and using some of the shortcut keys, I can actually send my client this report month on month automatically from within the system. And that, to us, was a game changer because, we can get them into a stronger cadence of this, of seeing the information and then using that in something like Connect 4 on a regular basis.
And in terms of how would you use kind of goal seek in combination with business road mapping then?
I think goal seek is great because one of the things we could use with the goal seek for is to realign the prices and the revenue that we're expecting. So again, if we're looking at gross profit, we can extrapolate that out, look at the pricing that we have. If we want to increase our prices by 5%, we can come into revenue and then just uplift that by a percentage, by that 5% price increase. So again, what we're seeing there is that interplay between making those decisions. Does it fit with what the client wants? Okay, that's a short term, but now let's take that longer term and see how that plays out over the next 6-12 months and what impact that decision can have. So one of the things that we like about forecasting, and forecasting is a regular, is a recent addition to the Fathom platform, but is the ability to create micro forecasts. So yes, we can pull the information through, we can edit directly in here, we can set up timing profiles, but what I can also do is create micro forecasts. Now, I would kind of call these mini scenarios, if you like. The official term we use is micro forecasts, but a lot of others may refer to them as scenarios in other products. I can spin up here a limited number of micro forecasts. Now, this could relate to a particular hire that we want to make at a particular point in time. It could be, I want to take on an asset at that point, maybe a delivery driver, a delivery vehicle. Maybe it's a loan that I want to introduce. It could be a CBILS loan or another loan or a bit of funding that comes into the business. So I can introduce that and I can play out what that micro forecast is going to be. Now, the beauty of having the business roadmap is that then allows me to bring all of those micro forecasts together and see how they interplay. Yep. So as you can see at the bottom here, I've now got my quick metrics. So I can see some of those decisions that I'm making and I can see the impact on my operating profit that they're having. Now I can then move those around. And as I move that, you'll see the numbers spin up automatically in real time, depending on when I want to include them.
Are you finding, in this weird time that we're in at the moment, where people may be looking for financing and or they're trying to decide different scenarios of how things play out, is this being a really useful tool for this period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of things. I think often we get caught up in two elements here. I think one, there's short-term forecasting or direct forecasting, which looks at your bank, it looks at your invoices, and looks at the timing profiles of those and gives you short-term cash flow. I think that's very relevant for a lot of businesses where cash has been tight. I also think, and the way that Fathom does this is more the indirect method of forecasting, which is more strategic. And I think there's a balance between the two. I don't think, certainly in my experience, that one is better than the other. I actually think you need a combination of two to achieve the best result for the client. Because we need to look at those short-term fluctuations and cash forecast. As a business owner, obviously the first thing I want to do is say, can I pay my staff? That's my first obligation as a business owner, is can I pay my staff? There's a problem there if I can't. Can I meet my obligations for this month? Beyond that, if I'm taking a loan or I'm taking on a debt, can I service that debt? That's what you as a business owner need to look at. That's what banks are going to be looking at, is your ability to service that debt. I think that's the longer term view. So yes, whilst we can always think of COVID as initially maybe as a short-term issue, first of all, we were talking about March, then we were talking about the end of the summer. I think short-term forecasting was coming in then. We're now nearly 12 months away, so I think a lot more longer-term view was needed around that. So absolutely, I think this is more relevant now than ever as we start to think of coming out, how those businesses have pivoted. Have they taken on new revenue streams? Are they taking on staff? Indeed, are they, unfortunately, having to let staff go and then realigning that? We've seen a lot of businesses, when I was in practice, forfeiting their premises, downsizing their premises, moving people home. There was savings there. What were those savings allowing them to do? For some, it was entrenching their positions. Others, it was allowing them to plan more effectively. So, absolutely, I think this is needed now more than ever.
Brilliant.
And I think the other thing as well was about the deferment of VAT as well. I think that was a really important point. If we're deferring our VAT, when are we deferring it to, and can we make those payments in that point of time?
Yeah, I think absolutely vital. And for SMEs particularly, runway, that's such a vital, your cash burn. How much cash have you got left in the bank, and do you need more financing? And that's where, I guess, playing with other solutions around financing in the market is one where Fathom plays really well with a solution, be it like a Capitalize or an iWalker or a working capital loans. That's where that finance function comes in, does it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think we have to look at that. We have to figure out, using micro forecasts to look at different types of loan from different lenders. What's the percentage of that lender versus that one? What's the impact of that over how many months? I think the power of this is so powerful. It is a very, very powerful tool. But I think one of the things that we've certainly seen is just how easy people are finding it to spin this up and sit with a client either on screen or combine that into a report once they've done it. And I think this really meshes very well into using something like Fathom, the business roadmap, the micro forecasts with Connect 4. Yep. Because not only are we showing the impact of that, the impact on the key metric that we want, but now we can then dip into Connect 4 and say, okay, here's the agreed action plan, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to measure it. So I think it dovetails into there perfectly for you. Brilliant.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that, and we're seeing some, I don't know, going a bit off track here, but some running asynchronous meetings. I know there were some Fathom users who loved a tool called Loom, for example, where they would talk through a recording of, like we're doing here, going through the numbers with the client, and then actually the client could add it in our case to a pod in Connect 4, and the client could view it at any time. I guess that's another way that it could be done.
No, we did that at Valley for a period of time when I was there. We would record client meetings in Loom, and we found it fascinating that when we send the Loom video over, yes, we could see it was watched, but it was just that ability to have that feedback. We had clients come back saying, "Thanks very much for sending that. By the way, at 4 minutes 55, this is what you said. Can you just explain that in a little bit more detail?" That was phenomenal to see that kind of feedback coming back.
That's brilliant. Well, thanks for the screen share, Darren. I think we are going over time a bit here because this is fascinating. But so parting comments on the importance. What's going to be the difference between the accounting firm that's talking to clients at the moment and those that aren't? I mean, how's it going to play out in your view?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think we're seeing a lot of firms that are, well ahead of that digitization journey. I think they've got a lot of advantage over others because they've digitized, they've chosen their right app stacks, and now they're leveraging it. I think we've seen a lot of people flip between different apps because they need to find the right one, and sometimes all that kind of shines is gold. And I used to use the term that people have been a bit of an app magpie, that they've got to find the right app stack for them, which has been good. I think it's going to be interesting. I think there's still a large number of firms out there that haven't digitized. And I think that's going to consolidate a bit more. I think there's going to be less of those type of firms around, but more for those that have and already started on this journey. I think it's interesting around that. I think we're going to see a lot more boutique practices spring up because the barrier to entry is much lower now. And again, lots of people working from home. But you've only got to look around some of the most recent poster boys and girls for kind of the GL products that have literally sprung up in the last 12 months, 2 years, to have some phenomenal practices, and they're doing some really cool things and are challenging the status quo with their approach, the way they communicate, much more asynchronous with their clients, using tools like WhatsApp and having live chat on their websites, and using tools like Connect4 and hopefully tools like Fathom as well to really embed those conversations. So I think that's going to continue. I think it's very much going to be the technical abilities are going to be the table stake for this going forward. I think it's now more around the interpersonal skills. I think that's certainly playing a part in the selection of recruitment of staff. Yes, we want great technicians, but equally we want to have people who can have a conversation, aren't afraid to dive in and give some narrative and some commentary around that. It's not just about being a great technician anymore. I think we've certainly seen that. I think we're going to see more firms owning the bookkeeping as well, because it just brings all of that together. The more you own that, and I can use an example of Will Farnell, who does that exceptionally well. Own that bookkeeping, and advisory should naturally come off the back of that because you're automating a lot of that. So I think that's where it's going to be in the next couple of years, to be honest. That's
great. No, that's brilliant. And you've name dropped Connect4 customer, so we're pleased about that. So that's there's different ways that you can go about it at the moment. So that's brilliant. Well, Darren, we'll end the recording there, but that was fascinating. Great to talk to you, and great to see Fathom again.
You're welcome. Happy to join you this afternoon.
Hopefully you enjoyed that short interview. My name is Andrew Jordon. I am the CEO at Connect4. Please do book a demo. Click on book a demo, and we will love to talk you through our platform and to show it in action. And yeah, great to have you with us.